And I want the panelists to talk about how their organizations view compliance with the DMS. Is it mandatory? Is it opt-in? How do they identify non-filers, and how do they encourage people to adopt? Esther, let's go with you first.
Certainly. So within Steptoe & Johnson, certainly iManage is the preferred location for all documents. With that, we recognize that there are some types of practices like litigation where they're going to have large volumes of large files, such as medical records and transcripts and things of that nature that it's simply not practical to keep that content in iManage. So that usually resides on some type of file share. In addition, sometimes with the large files that the energy group may be dealing with, at times those are also kept in a more of a network-based storage location. As far as compliance with the DMS, we encourage that. At this point, we don't enforce that. I think our objective is to make that, excuse me, to make that more of a productivity gain for the user. As far as, using iManage, keeping all your documents in one place just makes things flow better, right? It helps with their process. It helps with their workflow. It helps when they quickly need to file something. So, we've taken more of the approach that here are the advantages to utilizing iManage and making that your primary storage location rather than mandating that. As far as identifying non-filers, that is typically something that is done upon request. It's not something that we actively pursue at this point. I think that was a change for us when we hit the COVID work from home era here earlier in 2020. At that point, it became pretty much necessary for everyone to use iManage just to be able to work in that work from home environment. Certainly we saw an uptick at that point in activity on Threat Manager and a lot of alerts that came out of that because there was some drastic change in behavior just because of that sudden adoption by folks that may not have used iManage when they were in the office environment. As far as encouraging adoption, once again, training, we offer robust training on a monthly basis, little 30-minute segments on how to best get the most out of the product, learn about things that you're not currently using, identify ways that it could make your job easier, and streamline the processes that you deal with each and every day.
Thanks, Esther. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Aaron. At Bakerbots, we view the DMS as both mandatory and optional, and that might take a bit of clarification. So let me explain. I think the industry has evolved from a document management system to more of document management ecosystems. So in other words, iManage, Teams, SharePoint, common share, file shares, these are all legitimate places for data repositories. However, at bots, while you are able to use any one of those locations, the official client file is always going to be in iManage. So as much as you would like to use Teams or common share, eventually that data will make its way into iManage because that is the official client file. So as such, we're both mandatory and optional in that way. Now, how do we identify non-filers? For example, we have monitoring rules set up. There's one in particular that I have set up for partner email filings. And that report, which I receive once a week, lets me know which partners have filed email in that week or have not filed email in that week. And that provides yet another opportunity for the Records and Information Governance team to address the user or the internal customer and share with them some best practices, maybe do a little training along the way. Because again, in Records and Information Governance, that is an underlying theme for us. We're always training, always trying to improve by sharing best practices, et cetera. And over time, as you have those opportunities to train and share best practices, I do believe that will encourage adoption of the use of the document management system, in our case, iManage.
Thanks, Paul. That was a great response. Over to you, Ken.
Sure. So at TK, we strongly encourage compliance. We do not mandate it in all instances for a few reasons that I will cover. But I think all the prior panelists' comments about various large areas of data on file shares in SharePoint and other places is a great comment. Not everything will always make it into a single location, but one of the goals is to help employees understand how, by putting filing work, essentially it makes their life easier. It makes their work easier. That's really a winning strategy. And so, for example, having the opportunity to do cross-client searches or functional searches on content is one way that we've seen, encouraging employees to use iManage as a true benefit.
Thanks, Ken, and all the panelists for some really valuable, insightful comments. I want to go ahead and move on to resources and training. I think an important ingredient to any successful product is having the right resources, staffing, and training. I'd want each of the panelists to talk about staffing requirements, training, as well as the million-dollar question, and that is how long did it take for you to see value? Let's go ahead and start with you, Esther.
So with staffing requirements here, we basically, one person, and that's me, typically does most of the daily care and keeping of Threat Manager. I would imagine that could be somewhat different in maybe on-prem environments, but in the environment we are with everything being cloud-based, that works out fairly well. We do have others, of course, that have access to Threat Manager, both to do their own investigations as needed within the IT department, and then also, as a backup. Training was fairly simple for this product. I found it really intuitive as far as going through the different features that are available. It's not overcomplicated. There's, outliers probably would be the one thing that was a little interesting to get your arms around the capabilities of that, which that's kind of my go-to for finding data in an ad hoc type format. But as far as seeing value, I would say several months in, we started to build that repository of behavior analytics and started to see, the trends of user behavior. And of course, just user adoption and, who's busy, who's too busy, who's not busy enough. That kind of reporting, of course, was available very early on. I will say that as we first, started using the product, it's a little overwhelming because you do get a lot of alerts. I mean, there's everything is anomalous initially, right? It's Threat Manager is alerting on pretty much anything that anyone does until you start going in and start accepting and reviewing and flagging different activities that truly are or are not anomalous. So I would say, 2 to 3 months, we started to get value. By the time we hit the 9-month point, I would say it had become quite valuable as far as, becoming that reporting repository for activity. And, we use that, across many things other than just compliance and anomalies. There's a lot of use for being able to look at, activity within a specific matter or activity by a specific user within a specific date range.
Thanks, Esther. Over to you, Paul.
It doesn't take an army. Staffing requirements, I believe, are pretty minimal. At my firm, we have 5 people who really manage the Threat Manager software. And the reason for that is because all of the analytics, the alerts, the reports, they all come from the software itself. So you just need someone to be able to receive and review those reports and alerts, and then take action on them when needed. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't take very long to see the value. We were able to add, I think it was 3 years of data. So we were able to get some good information pretty quickly at Bakerbots. So I don't think that will be an issue if you're worried about how long it takes to see the value. The one thing I will caution you on, though, is if you're not a statistician, which I am not, you might want to get a little bit of assistance in setting up your monitoring rules and so forth. Aaron was great in doing that for us. iManage really helped us with that. But if that is your forte, you should be just fine. You'll have no issues. That is not my forte, so I did need a little assistance to make sure that our monitoring rules were solid, and that way we got the optimal results from those monitoring rules and saw almost immediate value.
Thanks, Paul. And we are continuing to invest in making the product easier to use and put out training so that you don't really have to rely on that statistics. You will see more in that area. Ken, over to you.
So to frame, Paul and Esther's comments and your comments just now, Aaron, from a staffing and training perspective, I wholeheartedly agree that once the product is set up and configured, that the requirements are minimal. It works well. It's automated. It generates alerts. It's very, very helpful. And I also agree with Paul's comments that initially setting it up does require someone with some expertise in the area. It's been a long time since we set ours up, Aaron, but going through and defining risk values from 1 to 16 or whatever it was, you might struggle with what value to pick. What's the best option to have? And in my world, in applications development, I sometimes write articles. I recently wrote one on no and low code technologies and things that can be done, which I think you just alluded to streamline things and make them a little bit more user friendly and help explain parameters and so forth. I think is an excellent idea. That would make it easier for anyone to get started. In terms of the value, prior points are excellent. You need to build up some history before the statistical analysis will start generating proper alerts. You may see some false positives at first. If like Paul's firm, you have history to put in, and that might shorten the time frame to value. And if so, that's great. And as I previously mentioned within TK, just having a reporting panel with some business intelligence is of great interest. If an employee, for example, who may work with HIPAA information or other, PI and so forth, is emailing documents, it's a great opportunity to have the visibility to maybe transition them to another iManage product like iManage Share or Citrix ShareFile or others that might facilitate arguably slightly more secure transfer of data. So, seeing the reports, having the visibility to how folks are working, and most of all being alerted to the types of potentially dangerous behavior is all valuable, and it didn't take that long for us to see it.
Thanks, Ken, and the rest of the panel for some truly insightful comments and the different perspective as well, which is always so valuable. I am going to move on and open this out to the panel. We may just be able to take one response here in interest of time, but I want the panel to comment on or share with the audience anything on lessons learned, marketplace trends, and capabilities you'd like to see in upcoming releases. Esther, over to you, because I think you had you wanted to share something in this area.
Yes, absolutely. So with the integration with iManage and iManage Share, certainly we're looking forward to increased capabilities in Threat Manager to indicate iManage Share activities. Because, currently when you have email or export, even if you export to iManage Share, it will show up as an export. So if you want to find out if that's to a hard drive or to iManage Share, you need to go manually locate that activity or the result of that activity. So certainly we're looking forward to that additional capability where that's a little tighter as far as being able to identify what is kept within the iManage ecosystem and what is going outside of the iManage ecosystem as far as activity reported in Threat Manager.
Thanks, Esther. I'd like to go ahead and conclude by thanking all our panel members, Ken, Paul, and Esther, for sharing your experiences. It was truly an engaging conversation.